Picking feathers up your butt does not make you a chicken. Welcome to Hey Guys Podcast. I'm Rob Lesliam, and this week we watched David Fincher's 99 movie Fight Club, a film in which male masochism and male hysteria are definitely at the forefront. We follow Edward Norton's narrator, or is he Jack, who befriends an intriguing soap salesman, played by Brad Pitt, Tyler Durden, and they fall down a path of violence, sex, and murder to overly prove the establishment wrong. Now, nearly 26 years on, does Fight Club hold up as a love letter to the male libido? Or is it all just a little off? Now, Liam, it's been nearly 20 years since I last watched this film, and I went in hoping to thoroughly enjoy it. But I've got to be honest with you, all I could do whilst watching the film this time was stare at Meatloaf's boobs.
His man tits.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully that's not the only thing you say that, considering this is such a good-looking movie. Such a good-looking movie.
They were good-looking boobs. They moved in all the right direction. Let's be fair.
They were surprisingly convincing. Supposedly, because he always carried a lot of timber, but supposedly he'd actually lost quite a bit of weight recently, and they had to kind of pack that on to give him a specific look, shall we say?
He wore, from what I can, when I was looking into this film, he wore like a bodysuit.
Yeah.
Like a fat suit with extra layers.
But just a boob suit, suit, basically. But yeah, well, it's a strong look, and just Meatloaf being in this film is quite a peculiar one. But Fincher does have, I don't want to quite call it stunt casting, but peculiar casting he's got in his locker, like obviously Meatloaf in this film. But remember, Tyler Perry randomly showed up in a very serious role in Gone Girl. He was actually really good in it, but it's, I think most people, when they think of Tyler Perry, they think of, is it Madea?
Oh, Madea,
Yeah. Which isn't really a thing in the UK, but it's massive in America kind of thing. But well, anyway, he's very good in Gone Girl. So it's like certain things Fincher has, which you don't kind of immediately associate with the occasional surprise casting. And then on top of that, it's the use of slyly, but very impactful CG. It's like, I always think of, what the hell's the Panic Room with Jodie Foster? There's a sequence where the camera goes through the handle of the cup and stuff, which doesn't feel like a big deal now, but in the early 2000s was pretty mind-blowing. And it's the same with this. The way that the camera moves around certain electronic items when he shoots himself in the face, all those sequences, maybe you don't bat an eyelid at them now, but back then you were just like, that was subtle, but that was amazing CG for 1999. And I was very happy to see that it nearly all holds up. But again, a big part of that is the direction. As I mentioned, the cinematography in this film is fantastic. And I was so glad to see it. I mean, yes, it does have that 1999 slightly green tinge, which every movie had. If you want to see the extreme version of it, I think it was It's My Life by Bon Jovi, the music video. It was like peak green tint in a movie. Maybe The Matrix, arguably, which was obviously the same year.
All I could think of when you're saying how it looked was how this seems to be the other side of the city where Seven is based.
Yeah.
Like it kind of looked around about the same thing. Like for some reason, Seven, it was just raining all on that side of the city. On this side of the city,
loves raining.
Everything's blowing up. I when I said all I could stare at was his boobs. It does look beautiful, but the only thing as well that I was staring at was Jared Leto's very blonde face. Like incredibly not only just blonde hair, but blonde eyebrows. Like, I mean, that guy was dipped in bleach, wasn't he?
He really was. I wonder if he was just there for that little quip. It's like, when obviously there are so many little nods and quips throughout this movie, visual identifiers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one of them was when Tyler Durden goes past, we're not going to be this, we're not going to be that. We're not all going to grow to be rock stars. And of course, as he says it, he looks directly at a rock star from 30 Seconds to Mars. And I think he was already in 30 Seconds to Mars, so it was clearly an in-joke. Jared Leto is pretty good in this film. And I know people have like weird opinions on Jared Leto because of 30 Seconds to Mars. And he's almost become a bit of a persona, hasn't he, kind of thing. But it's easy to forget that for the longest time. He was like, as far as I was concerned growing up, I was just like, he's just a really good actor. He's a really good actor. Yeah. And I still think he's got it in the locker. I know a lot of people really don't like him. But I was just like, when he's good, he's really good. And, we mentioned him, I think, just last week for Tron Ares, where some people have a genuine concern. It's like, fucking Jared Leto's in Tron Ares. I'm just like, listen, if it's the good version of Jared Leto, I'm all for it. In this, it almost doesn't matter because his role is quite limited, but it's memorable because of the hair and the fact that he takes one of cinema's all-time great beatdowns. Like he gets fucked up.
when you see him after then, and he's just pumped up.
It's horrible. And his nose and all sorts.
So basically, yeah, I agree with, like, I'm not a huge Jared Leto fan. It's nothing to do with 30 Seconds to Mars. I don't rate him, but he's fine in this. And I wanted to say, was he in one of those I Know What You Did Last Summer, like, horror films?
I have no idea.
He was in, what was the one where, like, if not Rumors, Urban Legends. I'm pretty sure he was in Urban Legends.
I remember nothing about Urban Legend. I've seen it once, and it just hasn't stuck with me at all. But yes, the fact of the matter is,
he was an Urban Legend. So he, like I said, he hasn't just done. I think after he did Requiem for a Dream and then Panic Room and stuff, his star started to rise, and he started to be a bit pickier with the films he did. But before that, like I said, he was doing things like Urban Legend and Switchback, and what else am I looking at here? Yeah, just crappy little films.
Well, in fairness to him, like for a pretty boy, you know, he has in many respects, not quite the same way, but he has gone the slightly Brad Pitt route of being like, okay, yeah, I look like a leading man, or I'm a very pretty face kind of thing. But he has taken up, right from, you know, going back to Requiem for a Dream, like, interesting roles. And he's worked with a lot of interesting directors. So, you know, obviously some people see talent in him. As I said, I think he's very good when he's good. The problem is when he's not very good, he tends to, you know, kind of inch towards the side of annoying. But for this film, at least, it's almost irrelevant, because this film completely is built around those three key performances. Like, everyone else, you could almost swap other people out at will, even Meatloaf to a certain extent, although he has like a certain visual, you know, impact that maybe other actors wouldn't have. But it's Helena Bonham Carter, Brad Pitt, and Edward Norton, of course. And they're all just fantastic in a film which, you know, I tried to watch Bad Boys Ride or Die just yesterday. This is going to make sense in a second.
Yeah.
And I was just like, listen, the action sequences are perfectly fine. The back and forth between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence is fine, whatever. But like so many modern movies, it looks like ass. It looks like ass. It looks like it was shot on a really fancy iPhone. Everything is so clean and clinical. It looks like a really expensive soap opera. And you're just like, man, so many modern movies just look horrendous. And I'm not going to go on, have that speech again. But going from that directly to this, a movie from 1999, which actually looks like a fucking movie, you're like, Jesus Christ. Thank God for movies like this. And maybe thank God for 1999. We've hardly talked about Fight Club yet, but it has to be said, and I think we did mention it on the Matrix podcast as well, that 1999 might be the best year for movies ever, certainly in my lifetime. So in this year alone, and this isn't mentioning all of them, there was The Straight Story, Eyes Wide Shut, Any Given Sunday, The Mummy, The Matrix, Phantom Menace, which I appreciate maybe isn't the best one, but it was super important, especially in 1999. I
thought that was 98.
No, Phantom Menace was 99. Because the next film, Austin Powers 2, had this like trailer. The way it sold this stuff is like, if you're going to see one movie this year, make it The Phantom Menace. If you're going to watch another one, watch Austin Powers, whatever. American Beauty, Toy Story 2, Green Mile, Sixth Sense, Being John Malkovich, Election, Magnolia, Three Kings, a movie which I love, but it feels like nobody talks about anymore, Iron Giant, American Pie, The Blair Witch, and Galaxy Quest. That is just some of them. That doesn't even, like, The Times of Mr. Ripley, I think was this year, but it's a film I haven't seen for my sins. And you look back at that list, you're like, God damn. There were so many amazing movies released in 1999. It's just one of those strange years where everything came together. And it was maybe the last time that the world was in a genuinely happy place. And to lead us back to this film, the reason that Fight Club is both timeless and an incredibly 1999 movie, aesthetically, other than the occasional use of a, payphone or whatever, you almost think this could have been made yesterday. But the themes around it are so incredibly 1999. Of course, it was like mega zeitgeisty as well. Yeah. But the fundamental premise of this movie is based around the idea of the failed Generation X, this idea that they had nothing to truly worry about, so they all ended up having a combined and shared existential crisis because everything should have been fine. So they found something internal to get freaked out about. So it becomes about male insecurities, toxic masculinity, whatever you want to call it. It's like if you made this in 2025, it just simply wouldn't work because there are too many genuine problems with the world to be worried about. But in 1999, certainly for a Westerner, certainly for American, you're probably like, everything seems pretty cool. Why aren't I happy? That's fundamentally the existential issue with this film, and everything kind of leads off from there.
Can I say, I'm loving Google at the moment because when you started going on about films in 1999, I wanted to Google see if there was films that you didn't say that I remember liking. And Jesus Christ, I don't know whether Google just knows me because I'm not even signed into mine. But I put movies released in 1999, and it's got top 1999 picks. Right?
Yeah.
First one, Mystery Alaska.
Jesus, that's the top picks for 1999. Yeah, this Google is definitely attached to you, no doubt.
I love that film because then you're looking at
it's fine, but I wouldn't put it in top picks.
I love that film. Then you're looking at End of Days,
a film I was going to write down, but I was just like, listen, I like End of Days more than I should. It's not a great movie, but I do really like it.
And then next to End of Days, the reason why I wanted to bring this up again, taking it away from Fight Club. The Substitute 3, Winner Takes All.
Jesus Christ. Those are the films that come up?
Yeah.
Well, if you have any doubt as to whether Google pays attention to your search history, this is proof positive. That's for damn sure.
Right.
But to bring it back to Fight Club, out of interest, are you a big David Fincher fan? Because I find outside of Fight Club, which was obviously a massive movie in my youth, huge film in 19... Well, we'll get to this in a second. Maybe it wasn't a huge film in 1999 for me. It was probably a huge film, as it was for many people, around 2000, say. Yeah. But for me, Fincher's always one of those directors I probably appreciate more than I genuinely love. Like, I love, I enjoyed Gone Girl. I really like Social Network, Seven, Panic Room, this in particular. But he's not one of those directors where I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to watch a Fincher film again. Because I know they're going to be maybe slightly challenging or pretty dark. But when I'm thinking of my favorite directors, despite the fact that he's obviously brilliant, he's never quite in that top tier for me.
No, I totally agree because I even though I said David Fincher seems to me randomly would be a household name. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of other films that I wonder what he's directed. So I went back to look at the films he's directed as well, and I must admit I only rate one of his films, and that would be
you only Seven. Rate one of his films.
I do, and it would be Seven. I don't rate Panic Room. I don't rate Zodiac. The Social Network. I could give two fucks about.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's awful. I'm not even going to get into this argument of where we see. I just said Substitute really 3, the winner takes all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Social Network is boring as fuck. I can't be dealing with the guy that ripped people off to do Facebook, whatever. And then I can't believe he did The Killer, the remake of The Killer, just like last year.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that yet. Is that any good?
I haven't seen that film yet. Oh. But maybe, again, that's my exact... I mean, obviously, I feel differently about Fincher than you do, and I like most of his films. Again, they're all technically brilliant to one extent or another. And what was did he do The Game, or am I making that up as well? The one with Michael Douglas.
Yeah, exactly. So another film that was just shit. Yeah.
It's not. Come on, man. With your extremes,
it's terrible. It was terrible.
It's got plenty of faults, but it's far, far away from shit. The only one, I mean, you can make an argument for as being bad, and it's weird that people have such a kind of interesting relationship with it, and I feel like public opinion swings back and forth all the time, is Alien 3, which obviously the big thing about that is he got that job at such a young age, and there was so much studio interference, and he's kind of disowned it to one extent or another. But I feel like it's one of those films that's hated, then it's underappreciated, then it's hated again, then it's kind of loved, then it's like, well, the director's cut's kind of good, and now it's terrible again. People can't make their mind up.
I don't have a problem with Alien 3. Like, I haven't seen Alien 3 for a long time, so maybe if I went back. But I don't really have that big of a problem with it, especially, like, compared to the other film. And it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm saying that one's all right, but I don't like The Game, and I don't like this. And, like,
it's a strange one to go to bat for, considering, yeah.
I don't rate a lot of his films. Like I said, 7, I think, is great. 7 is fantastic. Fight Club, we'll get to my rating at the end. But Alien 3, I remember it was fine for what it was. It was just a horror film. It was all right.
I think the big issue with that was like coming off Aliens, and I think it was a brave choice because it was something different. But to undo so much, like everything in Aliens was geared around saving Newt in particular, and obviously Hicks surviving, and then killing them off basically in the credits. You're like you're immediately on the back foot, and you don't undermine one of the greatest sequels of all time. Aliens 3 is fine. It's got too many British thespians in it. It's a bit too brown, a bit too gritty and grim. I mean, this film's pretty fucking grim, but the difference that this film has is that it has a fantastic and darkly black sense of humor, which The problem, my only actual major issue with this film is that it kind of runs out towards the end of the film when it all goes a bit Project Mayhem. And we've mentioned it with a few films we've done recently. When people think of this film, I think what they really think of is the first hour and the final shot. Everyone kind of forgets. It's like, oh yeah, it all gets a bit plotty and gets a bit, dare I say, slightly silly with the whole Project Mayhem. Everywhere he goes, everyone's just nodding at him, like Invasion of the fucking Body Snatchers.
Like he's taken over the world.
Yeah, it really
there's more,
does push it.
There's more Fight Club members than there aren't. That's how it felt. The other question I had for you, right? When you watched this film for the first time, were you aware of the twist or not? Like, did it come to you as a surprise?
Yeah, it did come to me as a surprise. Well, no, it didn't, because I figured it out before the end. But for a lot of the film, I didn't. But it's and it brings back to the whole point about the fact that most of us would watch it in 2000, 2001, because this movie was a bit of a flop, largely because they didn't know how to market it at all. Like, how do you sell such a bleak dystopian black comedy? They started terribly by making the tagline "Crime, Mischief, and Soap," with a big picture of soap, which means nothing to anybody if you haven't seen this film. And the fact that it had a ready-made, like, one of the great taglines of all time, the first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. That's the tagline, you fucking jackass. Whoever was doing the marketing for this film should have been shot out of a fucking cannon. So yeah, it bombed, but 1999 was like the very start of DVDs taking off. And obviously The Matrix was massive, but that was massive in the cinema, but then people would use it for their new TVs, their sound systems. But this was one of the first big DVD movies. And I remember in college, everyone was talking about this film. And obviously, same year, Sixth Sense, that was the other big twist movie. And everyone was talking, and it was like, oh, don't tell anyone about The Sixth Sense. The difference is with The Sixth Sense, everybody knew about The Sixth Sense because it was this massive hit. So everyone saw it in the cinema. Whereas this was much more of a slow burn. So people were seeing it months and months apart. And you heard these rumors about this film, like Fight Club's fucking amazing. And it's got this amazing twist. But obviously it was before everyone had the internet. So I managed to steer clear of it. And watching the movie, I mean, again, watching the movie, as part of a podcast, and you're like, all right, how many hints did they give you that he's Tyler Durden? The answer is fucking loads.
All of them. That's where I wanted to see. So I kind of figured it out as well. When I first watched this, I kind of figured it out just before the end, like you said.
I figured it out just out of interest, just to see if you figured out the same time as me. It was when he has the fight with Marla in the kitchen, and she like kicks off at him, and there's like their whole conversation, and they keep walking in and out of the room at different times, and you're just like, and that was the bit where I'm like, oh, they're the same fucking person. Like, this is all in his head. So it was like maybe 15 minutes before the actual reveal, I think.
Because then because Tyler as well is saying, don't talk about me, don't mention me.
Like, yeah, they do that earlier, but that bit didn't click. It was the second argument they have in the kitchen when she storms out the second time. And I was just like, oh, no, they're definitely the same person.
It's just, as you look back at it, as I was watching it, it's just, the hints are just there consistently. It's right, ridiculous how many. And even, I didn't know as well that there was loads of, I knew they did it. I mean, they said about Tyler Durden splicing in dicks into kids' films. Mm-hmm. And you get splices of Tyler Durden in the film. Yeah. Fucking that was consistent at the beginning as well. There was about 3 or 4 in one.
Yeah, I mean, those
in one foul swoop.
You could almost pass off as, oh well, that's just like a weird meta thing. I'm not sure if I would have immediately jumped to no.
I wasn't jumping to that. I'm just saying, like, how many different
things I saw what you mean. Yeah. But you get, like, right from the off, it's like The Sixth Sense. It's like, I can't remember the comedian, but he did this whole sketch. It's like, we all fell for The Sixth Sense. He's like, oh, so nobody knew he's dead. Do they not show him dying in the movie? It's like, no. He gets shot at the start of the film. But we all find it easier to believe that a wife wouldn't talk to a husband for a whole year than we would that a guy might be, dead in this film. And it's the same with this. It's like, I know this because Tyler knows this. He says that right at the start of the movie. And you're just like, that's a massive hint. And it's like, if you wake up in a different time zone, a different place, are you a different person? He says that as Tyler Durden's going past him. We have the exact same briefcase. Is that what a man looks like, when they're on the bus? And of course, the joke being that Tyler Durden looks exactly like that. And there's even subtle things like he pays for only one ticket and they both walk on and somebody knocks into him. They don't see him. The whole Marla Tyler thing is surprisingly unsubtle when you go back and watch it. And even later in the film, for some reason, when he's kicking his own ass in the office, he says, for some reason, I thought of my first fight with Tyler. these are just some of them, by the way. There are fucking tons, scattered all the way through the film. You're just like, man, it took me like 80% of the movie to figure this out. Admittedly, I am one of those people. I'm not sure what you're like. I don't try and figure out twists. I like let movies wash over me. I want to be surprised.
I like to. But it's not that I like to. I just have to. As I'm watching it, you kind of figure. And I'm not trying to say I'm special on magic and figure out what I do find a lot of is like the inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, that guy had a blue tie on that shot, and now he's got a red tie. Or that, like those little things. They always, like I always, my wife hates it because I will always point out little things like that. And the worst thing to point out is, well, that's clearly not the right person. That stunt double is like 6 foot taller than him. I mean, obviously you're gonna know the stunt doubles, aren't you?
But
for some reason, I've always picked out like that's wrong or that cigarette's longer now, it's shorter now and it's longer now. Like I've always picked out those.
I never pick, and I think it is the whole thing about wanting movies to wash over me, and I want to kind of become part of that world. And that comes back to my initial point about how I want a movie to look like a movie. In too many modern films, they remove that like layer of veneer, whatever you want to call it. And I can't help but constantly just think this is a movie. This is just something being shot. They're actors. I'm just not convinced by the world because of the aesthetic. But yeah, a massive part of like dragging you into this world, as we said, are those 3 core performances from Helena Bonham Carter, Brad Pitt, and Edward Norton.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt in particular, it's hard to overstate just how big of an impact that performance and his aesthetic in this film had on us back in 1999. Like, this is peak Brad Pitt. This is arguably, from my lifetime, peak guys want to be him, girls want to fuck him. Like, every guy saw this film and like, man, I want to look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. That used to just be an ongoing thing. And it's amazing that everyone was so self-aware that they were just nowhere near as handsome as him. And it was made apparent by the fact that nobody wore the red jacket. Like, it was such an iconic look. The sunglasses, the hair, the red leather jacket. And everyone's like, oh, that looks so cool. Brad Pitt's just looking the business. But everyone knew that they couldn't pull it off. Nobody bought, it wasn't like with The Matrix when everyone went out and bought black leather dusters and all that shit, long coats. Everyone saw the Brad Pitt red leather jacket and his look, and they're just like, I can't pull it off. It only works because it's fucking peak Brad Pitt, and that's it.
So, talking about Brad Pitt, right? And again, I'm taking us off kilter because that's basically what I do. Well, of all his films, 95 acting credits, right? Gimme is known for.
Like Brad Pitt.
Yeah. Just a couple of random pulls.
Ocean 11.
I thought that would have been in there. No.
See, I don't know now. I'm having a complete blank. It's not going to be like Thelma and Louise or something weird like that where he has a small role, or something more recent like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I thought that would have been. Nope.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
All right, go for it. Surprise
Fight
me.
Club.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously, Fight Club.
Yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, that was a massive hit. Hit, in fairness.
12 Monkeys.
Yeah. No, I get, again, a film nobody really talks about anymore, but I will talk about briefly in a moment.
Moneyball.
Oh, yeah, again, a big. I should have said that because I watched that literally a few weeks ago again. That feels like the exact kind of film you would never watch and just simply won't like. You just pass off as being boring.
I like Moneyball.
Oh, well, Jesus Christ. I am genuinely surprised by that. I thought it was
I like Moneyball. Like, I watched it as a double feature randomly with Trouble with the Curve, and I liked them both. I thought they were good films. Hey, before you go on to mentioning 12 Monkeys, I did have a question for you, right? So you said about like the hints, like all those hints about Tyler Durden and the narrator being the same person. And the one thing you said was when I was beating myself up in the office, it reminded me of my first fight with Tyler, which is a big hint, as you said. If you were in a pub and you heard a ruckus outside, and you went outside to check, and you saw a guy kicking his own ass, would you follow this guy into a fight club, into Project Mayhem, into destroying half the city? This is the guy who was just beating the fuck out of himself.
Yeah. Well, this is the level of disillusionment with Generation X, apparently, that they're watching a guy kick his own ass and thinking, Joe, I want a bit of that fucking action. But that is the thing is, that whole idea.
I want a bit of that action. I will follow that guy into everything. I will follow that guy into moving into his dilapidated home, being yelled at
Well, I think the idea is that if we're looking at it as most extreme example, is that a lot of these guys just want something out of the ordinary. Because we mentioned masculinity and everything else. I mean, at its most clumsy, this film isn't the finest or the most subtle critique of modern, quote unquote, modern day commercialism. But this idea that, or capitalism to one extent or another, that these guys are all just stuck in their humdrum lives. They all live in the suburbs. They've all got these jobs. And just the idea of just watching him kick his own ass, it just takes them out of the mundane. And they're just like, this guy's out of his fucking mind. And yeah, he's beating the shit out of himself, but he's a really good public speaker. And he's very confident. And everyone's just like, let's just go with this guy. He's fucking bonkers. Fuck going to the office tomorrow. We're just going to get into fights with strangers now. And everyone does seem incredibly keen to join his club, despite the fact that, yes, it doesn't make much sense.
I felt sorry for Bob. Like when they started the whole military camp in the dilapidated house, Bob rocks up. They let in Ricky or whatever his name is. And then from Bob's point of view, Edward Norton says, "You're too fat, fuck off." And as he goes down the stairs, Edward Norton runs up to him and goes, No, Bob, stay. But just stay for 3 days and you can come in. So in that scene, apparently, Edward Norton's done both of these things to him. And he's thinking, yeah, you know what?
I was actually thinking about that. But I was like, I could get it. This whole idea that it's like, he tells him to fuck off and then he actually fucks off. And then he's just like, no, dude, because I do like you, but I've got to do this to everyone. Just come back. We're going to give you shit for a couple of days. You just got to ride it out. Don't take it personally, kind of thing. I can totally see that.
I don't know. I would be thinking, fuck me, this guy's got two personalities. Well, surprise.
Well, he definitely has. But and that's the thing. This film will just make less and less sense with each and every year. I can imagine to certain Generation X's, this film would have made sense. To me, watching this one 17, 18, it just seemed to one extent or another quite cool and counts culture. But I guess to a certain generation of people, and comes back to the whole idea of being inundated with existential crisis and finding trouble and danger and threat from within rather than from the outside, that this might all fundamentally make sense. Whereas living in 2025, you're just like, oh, dude, I can't get into fights. There's just too much to fucking deal with. The mortgage, everything else, everything's fucked. There's fires everywhere. I can't be dealing with fighting with strangers. But in 1999, when everything was pretty fucking awesome, you're just like, oh man, I just need something to happen. Just take me out of the mundane. Whereas us in 2025, we're just like, man, I could go for some mundane. I'd fucking love some mundane. I don't want to go fighting strangers. Fuck all that noise. Although I guess that's the whole point. I'm like, you might be more inclined to follow handsome ass Brad Pitt, but none of them are seeing Brad Pitt. They're seeing relatively scrawny Edward Norton, which was quite interesting because he had to it wasn't just Meatloaf. He had to lose loads of weight as well because he was coming hot off American History X, another fantastic movie where he was absolutely jacked for that film. And they were just like, this film doesn't make any sense if Edward Norton's jacked. So he had to lose all the muscle mass. So then Brad Pitt obviously looks how he wants to look and all that nonsense. But to bring it back to 12 Monkeys briefly, Brad Pitt just seems to have a speciality in playing lunatic revolutionaries. And, it's like his character in this film, in many respects, is just the cooler, better dressed version and maybe slightly less crazy version of his character in 12 Monkeys. And I was like, his character, Tyler Durden, would be the character from 12 Monkeys if it wasn't for the fact that he was a figment of Norton's characters, the narrator's imagination. And when he realizes he's insane and it's just, okay, you're who you are. Do you say his name was Jack at the start?
I assume because he kept saying, I'm Jack's self-inflated ego. I'm Jack's left kidney. I'm Jack's this. So I don't know. Were they hinting that his actual name is Jack?
I thought it was just for the book, but maybe you're right. But when he suddenly has that realization, like, I'm talking to myself, you realize like he doesn't look nearly as cool. Like the hair goes, he's got those stupid glasses on. He kind of looks dopey and he gets a bit more jittery. He suddenly is the crazy version of Tyler Durden that might exist in the real world. It's almost like his external kind of realization of that character. What would he look like if I was looking at him from the outside and be like, this guy's a fucking lunatic, instead of the fact that, oh wait, this is me, I suppose. But maybe I'm just talking about a lot because I want to watch 12 Monkeys again.
I do want to watch 12 Monkeys again. I'm just afraid it's just not going to hold up for me.
Oh, I think it totally will. I think because it's directed by, what's his name?
Terry Gilliam.
Terry Gilliam. his aesthetic, it ages wonderfully. You know, it's kind of like Fincher films. They all have that timeless nature because they just look like Fincher movies. And I think it's the same with Terry Gilliam films. Like, they all just look somewhat timeless because they don't look like, oh, that's a movie from 1995. You're just like, that's just a Terry Gilliam film, and that's it, you know?
It's funny, isn't it? Because 95, it's either 94 or 95. I can't remember the year. But I'm afraid that 12 Monkeys isn't going to hold up. But I'm itching to watch Blown Away with Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones again. I do
quite like that, but yeah. I think there's less riding on that because, dare I say, 12 Monkeys is a more iconic movie than Blown Away with Jeff Bridges.
I don't know. I don't know whether to like save it for one of my picks in the future or just watch it now because I don't know. I like a bit of Blown Away.
Yeah, I don't mind that film. A great cast, I think that helps it. It's a whatever film with a fantastic cast. I think that kind of drags it over the line. But one of the interesting things with this film, and it's not quite the same as Starship Troopers, was just how misjudged it was by critics. You know, a lot of critics kind of pinned this film as being this like almost bro culture film and, you know, celebrating violence. And you go back and you watch it and yeah, there are fights in it, but there is nothing celebratory about violence in this film. The fights are gross. They're brutal. They're often clumsily choreographed. And the best choreographed fight in the whole film is actually the silliest one at the end when he's fighting Tyler Durden. And Tyler, I forgot just how Bruce Lee goes. He really sticks that whole persona for like the entire fight. And it's played for laughs, that sequence. And it feels like in terms of choreography, that's the one it leans into most because it's like, oh, we can have some fun with this. But the rest of the film, there's no glorifying of violence in this film. There's no glorifying of kind of this like, old-fashioned masculinity. But that's the way some people read it, in the same way some people thought Starship Troopers was just a big, dumb kind of bro action science fiction movie. And then you go back, you're like, have you kind of missed the point of this film? And apparently some critics absolutely did. But obviously it's been kind of, that wasn't the case for all critics by any stretch. And obviously as time's gone on, this was, kind of seen as initially a cult classic and now has gone on to, I think, go down as like just a bona fide classic of 90s cinema.
One of the big critics who wasn't a fan was Roger Ebert himself. I think it was 2 out of 4 stars. And just taking a snippet out of his review, he put here, sometimes for variety, they beat up themselves. It's macho porn, the sex movie Hollywood has been moving towards for years, in which eroticism between the sexes is replaced by all-guy locker room fights. Women who have had a lifetime of practice of dealing with little boy posturing will instinctively see through it. Men may get off on the testosterone rush. The fact that this is very well made and has a great first act certainly clouds the issue. Like, he was very met on it.
I think he has fundamentally missed the point of the film, to be honest. Which he has, that he reviews a lot of films, and I'm a big fan of Roger Ebert, but he didn't always hit the nail on the head, and I think he has kind of missed the fundamental point of this film. When he's saying about like this whole idea we've been going towards this film, it's like, no, cinema was not going towards this film. This was a very unique piece of cinema, and in many respects, it's so much darker than I think, because it's so quotable. Like, if this movie had been released, like, say, today, it would be so gifable and memeable. The things that own you end up owning you. The first rule of Fight Club. How much can you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? His name is Robert Paulson. Even some of the fun stuff. It's like, that's what people remember. And as I said, people really do, when they think of this film, largely think of the first half. And of course, it's called Fight Club and has all these great lines and fantastic sequences. But when you go back and watch it as a whole film, you're like, this film is grim. It makes for often uncomfortable viewing. The dark humor makes it slightly more palatable, I suppose, for lack of a better term. But you're like, this isn't a pleasant film. It's not a fun film. It's a very, very good film. But I think because it has these moments of levity, people remember it almost in a different way. But when you sit down and watch it as like a 2-minute 10, 2-minute 20 film, whatever it is, you're just like, this is like a properly challenging film. This isn't about just dudes getting into fights. It's about so much more than that. And it doesn't all land the plane in terms of everything it's trying to achieve in terms of tone, in terms of concept, whatever you want to call it. But for the most part, I mean, like I said, it is fundamentally a brilliant film, but it's not the film that I think a lot of people remember it being, if that makes sense.
I wonder as well. And I wonder if I've missed the mark, because nobody's actually mentioned this. I wonder if Marla is a figment of Edward Norton's imagination as well, because there's a bunch of things in there that make me think, like, nobody acknowledges her in any of the support groups. He's the only one that talks to her. There's a scene then when he confronts her at the coffee table, and there's a guy walking towards them, but then turns around when he starts talking to Marla, and you think he's going to approach Marla, but maybe he just turns around because all of a sudden Edward Norton's talking to himself. Mm-hmm. 3 scenes she's walked into traffic.
The scene with traffic is a bit of a throw.
Yeah, cars are just going around it. But then the only thing then that made me think about that is the fact that the guys grab her off the bus at the end. They can see her. They have her.
Yeah.
It starts to get a bit twisted. But at the beginning, it was like, is she a figment of his imagination?
I think maybe it might have been like a bit of a red herring because, as you say, when she sits in all like the they're not classes, are they? The group sessions and stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody really talks to her. And like you say, especially the sequence when she walks out into traffic, like she's a fucking superhero and the car's going past and nobody seems to notice her. But at the end, as you say, the guys grab her. And also there's the sequence in the cafe when she shouts and everybody's like gets shocked and turns around. So she's definitely real. But I think there is something to be said that, that perhaps he was throwing that in there as a red herring, that almost like she's so weird that maybe she isn't real. So then you're not thinking about necessarily Tyler Durden not being real. But
I just think I was trying to convince myself that I might have been on the head then, I realized that she spoke to the coppers, didn't she? When she was going to kill herself and the coppers came up and she was...
of course. So, yeah. But it's just one of those things. But the one thing I will say about the whole like twist thing is like, unlike The Sixth Sense, which it's a magic trick, but it's one magic trick. It's still a well-directed movie and it's interesting, but when you rewatch it, everything is predicated on the whole, oh, I know what the twist is, and then you just can't help but watch it and go like, oh, well, obviously that's a nod, that's not. And as we already mentioned, when you're watching it for a podcast, you can't help but go like, oh, where are all the signs to suggest that they're the same person? But I would also suggest that, well, it'll never have the same impact as it does the first time, of course, is that the film still totally works, even if you know the twist. It still totally works as a fantastic movie in a way that Sixth Sense doesn't. Sixth Sense is a great movie in many respects, but because it's a one-trick movie, once you know the trick, you can never watch it in any way near the same way again. Whereas this film, you're like, oh, it's still a great film. I just don't know that one bit. The film doesn't live and die by that twist. It's an important plot point, but the film isn't purely kind of like reliant upon that twist by any stretch of the imagination, which is proved by the fact that it goes on for another 15, 20 minutes after the big reveal. And like I said, I actually figured out, and I don't mean that in a big-headed way, I never figure out these things, but like 15 minutes before the actual reveal, I was like, okay, I know what's happening here. And then, the reveal then suddenly feels slightly heavy-handed because like, yeah, dude, we know. But it doesn't matter because it's still a brilliant movie. And if anything, the most iconic moment in the whole film is arguably the final shot, which doesn't even have Brad Pitt in it. And like I said at the start, it's like a movie when most people think of it, they think of the first 60 minutes and then they go straight to that last shot with the buildings going down. He shot himself in the face. You have Pixies, Where Is My Mind? And you're like, that is a proper way to end the film. Like it's up there with like the end, like Empire Strikes Back. You shoot like I can only imagine that the similarities are purposeful to one extent or another. But when you see it, like, what a great way to end a fantastic movie.
Oh,
after they had kind of, like I said, there's like a 30-minute spell when this film has a bit of a wobble just before that.
It's a great ending. And I realize, as we've talked about this film, I actually haven't said like my thoughts of it. I'm not going to call it a fantastic movie. I don't know. I'm very lukewarm on it. There's just it was watchable for the most part, but you start to get bored.
I love the idea. Fight Club, 3 stars, watchable.
It starts to get boring at parts. Like you said, it has a bit of a wobble. This whole thing where they're going on about Project Mayhem just seems to come out of nowhere all of a sudden. And I appreciate that because he's saying that because you're following the narrator, so there's a lot of things you're missing as well, because you're missing like Tyler Durden recruiting the entire country apparently. But it's just a very odd paced film as well. I had a bunch of things in there where I wasn't a fan of. So I'm not going to say it's a fantastic movie. It's not terrible for in a long shot, but it's not fantastic. It's not absolutely brilliant. It's all right. Like,
well, I'm going to massively disagree. I think it's an absolutely fantastic film. I think it's just filled with so many iconic shots, so many fantastic performances. The dialogue's amazing, the cinematography, the direction, everything about it just ticks so many boxes. I'm not going to say it's a perfect film by any stretch. As I said, like 60 minutes in, you ask me if this is like a near perfect film. I say yes. But the stuff and of course they kind of have to have the Project Mayhem thing for him to have the realization things need to get out of hand. And that was actually one of the things with 90s cinema in particular. It was like this, it's not quite the same as movies like Blow and Goodfellas, because they always, the trope that they had was that these movies would run over like decades, and they always start amazing. Everyone's having a great time because they get into the drug business. And then things slowly fall apart after they start getting success. And in this movie, it's when they start to basically franchise out. And I'm not sure if that's like a purposeful nod to the whole, critique of commercialism. The idea that when Fight Club ostensibly becomes a franchise and it starts popping up all around the country and they have no idea who's starting it and where it's showing up, that's when things start going wrong. But of course, it has to escalate for him to have that moment of realization. It's just, like you said, the sense of fun is kind of lost. And I know the whole idea is it's supposed to get very dark, but without that hint of black humor, it just starts feeling a bit oppressive. And that dystopian wave that comes in like the last 30 minutes does become a bit cloying, I find. And I think, for all the darkness inherent in this film, as I said, that sense of fun and humor that is just behind the scenes keeps it just lively enough that you're like, oh, this is like still a fun movie, despite the fact that the plot and the core concepts are actually incredibly dark. But when that's removed, it's like, all right, this is suddenly becoming a bit of a slog. And the fact of the matter is, I just don't give a shit about Project Mayhem. When they all start to go into the house, I'm like, I can't give a shit about that. And inherently, it all starts to become very plotty because it's leading up to the reveal. So instead of it being this kind of oddly bright and breezy movie about all these like really dark concepts at the core, it suddenly becomes this dark, dreary, plotty kind of movie for 20, 30 minutes. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to see this again. So even rewatching it, if I wasn't doing it for the podcast, I might be tempted to be like, I think I can skip the next 20 minutes and get on with the final shot.
I love it when we disagree, because when I say like I don't like it, and you say all the reasons you like it, it seems to be every time I go to say something, you think of something else that you need to go, well, no, this is why I like it as well. You're Rob, you're not fucking talking till I say this is why I like it. It's quite funny sometimes. But I'll agree with you, it looks great. Mm-hmm. It does look great, but it's just, I don't know, it's just very self-involved. It's very self-indulgent. There's just a lot of look at me moments in it. And for the most part, it got a bit too involved for me. And I just wasn't a huge fan of a bit, like, I don't want to say a lot of this film. There was some bits of this film I just thought, what we could have done without. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just became very mediocre in certain parts as well.
Mediocre is harsh, but that's fair enough if it doesn't work for you. But a few questions to get off in terms of what we actually feel about it, just kind of questions that arose from watching it, was if you, and it does kind of bring up the point, when he gives them all their homework and says, I want you to start a fight and I want you to lose, it does mention starting a fight is actually trickier than you'd think. And I was like, outside of going to a pub when people are drunk, I was like, I bet you it is actually solid. And it's like, how would you go about it? If you had to all right, tomorrow, and obviously you're a big guy, it's going to be tricky, but take that out of the equation. Just like, I need to start a fight with tomorrow and I need to lose. Where would you go to start a fight?
Lose the fight?
Yeah, well, lose the fight is almost irrelevant. Like, as long as it starts, you can just get your ass kicked, I suppose, by not fighting back. But where would I go, say in Edinburgh or Cardiff, to be like, all right, I need to start a fight, and ostensibly what I really need is somebody to fight back against me. The easy option obviously is to say a pub or something. But outside of that, I'm like, where would I go?
Gym on Romney Riverbridge Road. Just tell them all the steroid heads. They'll fucking start straight away on you.
Yeah. Gym's good. Yeah, testosterone's up, all that jazz. Or
you can tell I thought about that straight away. I had that answer in the chamber.
You had that. Well, okay, so here's the second question. See if you've got this. How hard would it be, do you think, to kick your own ass? So he does it in this film. And obviously, when he thinks Tyler Durden is real, I can buy into that because your brain's not fighting against it, because his brain is convinced that I'm getting my ass kicked by another person. So he can beat himself up. But when he's in the office and there's no Tyler Durden, he's just play acting, kicks his own ass, punches himself in the face, throws himself through the table, all that jazz. It's how easy or hard would that be to do? Because I've got to assume that there's a defensive part of you which just wouldn't allow yourself to really punch yourself in the face.
That's what I was thinking. So the punch in the face, it's got to take a lot, because there's got to be some self-defense mechanism that kind of just stops her at the last second.
That you are going to naturally pull your punch no matter how hard you don't want to.
I think it's going to be easier to throw yourself through a glass table or throw yourself through the cabinet or whatever it was.
Yeah, but to punch yourself in the face.
To punch yourself really in the face, to draw blood.
Yeah.
I do think that, there is something that's going to snap back and just stop that. It's funny. What I liked as well is, of this, when you said about them starting the fight, I do like that they showed the one person that actually had the fight or had the courage to was the mechanic played by Holt McCallany. The person that went back to fight him was the student at the seminary school, like the vicar guy. And then the next couple of scenes, you actually see him in Fight Club. I'd never noticed that before. Cool. That was like 20 years ago, but I never noticed that then all of a sudden he is a member of Fight Club. So after he has this weird fight chase down scene with the mechanic goes, no. Let me tell you about this place where you can just get fucked up if you want to. And
he shows up. The thing is, for the most part, I can see the appeal. When Fight Club's working properly, that idea that somebody would want to go there, they get into these kind of, bare knuckle box fights. Like you said, it goes on for as long as it needs to. But after seeing Jared Leto get smashed a bit, and the bit with Lou, where Lou comes down and beats the shit out of Tyler Durden, and obviously sprays blood on him and all that jazz. Those sequences, as I said, I think the fight choreography is perfectly simplistic because it is just normal dudes fighting. Like I said, this film does not glorify violence in any way. This isn't like watching a movie when all of a sudden these guys start kicking each other's asses and there's high kicks and stuff. These are clumsy ass fights. And the one thing it does better than most films is it really makes you feel the punches, especially in those two sequences. The sound effects and obviously the blood and everything. But it's like when you hear the punches, you're like, even now, I know that Jared Leto sequence is coming. It's a tough watch, man. And I think a big part of it is the sound design. When you just see those punches, it's just that wet thudding sound. Most movies, it's not quite, Batman 1960s, whack, boom, pow, and all that shit. But punches are usually kind of, they've got like a movie sound to them. In this, no, it's like a wet bag of sand. And you can totally imagine, the idea that, somebody's face is getting completely caved in here. And it's so unpleasant. And again, it's another one of those reasons where, you read these reviews from back in 1990, like, how did anyone think that this movie was glorifying violence? It's just not at all. But opinions vary, obviously.
The Lou fight was interesting because he's just letting Lou beat the shit out of him because and then he drips the blood in him. He's saying, "You don't know where I've been." But then you've got the henchman next to him with the gun, and he doesn't know what to do. He's trying to drag him off him. But if he starts shooting, he hasn't got enough bullets to take all these guys out. He doesn't want to shoot people on the premise, on Lou's premises, kind of thing. And it's very interesting to just be able to go as your Tyler did. It doesn't matter if it's Edward Norton at this point or whatever. Getting fucked up, and he's like, I'm getting beat up on purpose. I'm letting him beat me up. It's not like I'm just gonna let him kick the shit out of me. And then the whole thank you, Lou, can we stay here, Lou? I want you to promise, Lou. Like all that thing is just he's trying to be as polite as possible, yelling at him while he's spitting blood in his face. It's very good and it's gross.
It's easy. Again, Brad Pitt is such a good actor. And Edward Norton was on a bit of a hot streak here. And he was a proper A-lister for a while. It's easy to forget now because arguably he's never been the same since he didn't stay on as the Incredible Hulk. So the Incredible Hulk has had a bit of a renaissance, I think. The movie that is. I always really liked. Is it McG? Is it MCG or is it McG, the director?
I've always called him McG.
Well, McG, that film has its faults, but aesthetically, that's my favorite Hulk. By The Incredible Hulk.
McG didn't direct The Incredible Hulk, did he?
Yeah. I'm sure he did.
No, he didn't.
Dude, I'm sure he did. We can look at
it was Louis Leterrier.
Oh, maybe it was. Oh, no, I think you are right. Which one did... Oh, McG did... what am I thinking? That was Terminator Salvation he did, didn't he?
Yes,
McG.
that's shit.
Yeah. So, but Edward Norton was obviously the Hulk. I think that film is surprisingly good. It has its faults, but especially the aesthetic of the Hulk himself, especially, the way it's gone with the Hulk, where he got more and more ridiculous and more quote unquote fun, in that he is a monster in many respects. But Edward Norton, I thought, was a really good Bruce Banner. Obviously, at that point, they were much more interested in kind of harking back to the older 80s TV show. If he hadn't had that fallout and had stayed as the Incredible Hulk and had gone on to be in all the Marvel films, you think, my God, how much more famous would he be? But arguably, as a leading man, as A-star, A-list. A-list star. Thank you very much. Yeah. He was never quite the same after that, but yeah, shame. Maybe I just want to bring up the Incredible Hulk, even though I fucked up who the director was. The fact that you knew who the director was straight away, are you a fan of the Incredible Hulk?
I like the Incredible Hulk. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting film. I really like. Yeah, I knew it was Louis Leterrier anyway, but no,
well, you knew it was fucked when they did She. And I'm not one of these guys like hating on She-Hulk. She-Hulk was whatever, but when they brought back the Abomination and they just turned him into like a joke, like the whole thing with his character in the Incredible Hulk is that the Abomination was genuinely quite scary. And Tim Roth was totally bonkers in that film, and they just turned him into like a joke for that. And you're just like, oh, dude, is this what we're doing? And yeah, that was, but this was all part of Phase 5 when kind of Marvel lost its way a little bit. So hopefully it'll bring back a bit of edge now. But they could certainly do worse than making a direct sequel to The Incredible Hulk. But obviously that'll never happen because the Hulk's been to space and fucking all sorts since then. So it is what it is.
Northern he had a great 98. Because you said he came off American History X to do Fight Club in '99, but in between then he did Rounders, which I argue is a great film. Rounders,
that was a really good film. Yeah, I don't think you have to argue. That is a really good film. Yeah, he was just one of those. Oh, I think he was always considered like one of the best actors of his generation. I think he got a bit of a reputation for being hard to work with, but. Yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I think he's fantastic in this, and so is Helen Bonham maybe doesn't get enough attention because this feels like the Tyler Durden narrator story, the Edward Norton Brad Pitt film, but she's in it like a huge amount of this film. She could just as easily be on the poster alongside them, but instead they went for a bar of soap. What the fuck would they think with that bar of soap? Ridiculous marketing for this film.
The whole soap, like I know what they're saying. Like you can make if you do anything with soap, you can make explosions and things like that. Explosions, you can make explosives, but. The whole thing about like, all right, Edward Norton can't sleep. The narrator can't sleep, so he's got all these jobs. He's got the projectionist job. He's got the working at the hotel job. But fuck me, even for a guy that can't sleep with him, that's a lot of job. And to know how to make soap.
Yeah, he's doing. I guess the idea is like he's just a smart guy, and maybe there's a hint with all those like books. But I think the more important aspect of that film is just that idea that the everyday kind of like this whole chunk of society who are being taken for granted are potentially very dangerous because all they have to do is like if you get the right person pointing them in the right / wrong direction, they can achieve / amazing / terrible things. But yeah, I don't know. Even if you're only sleeping 1 hour a day, he's achieving an awful lot. So, but that is the thing. By the end of the film, how much is he actually? Is he like, as far as he's concerned, is he sleeping like 23 hours a day? And it's just Tyler Durden all the time. And even for the whole film, like you don't know how much is it him imagining Tyler Durden being there, or how many times is it Tyler Durden? He is Tyler Durden, and he's imagining himself watching Tyler Durden and all these other things. So you never know how much he is him and he is Tyler Durden and all that jazz until the very end, when obviously it goes very Tyler, to say the least.
It leads to an interesting question, being if your main consciousness is the narrator, and then Tyler, so when you've gone to sleep, per se, Tyler Durden is taken over. Does your main consciousness feel rested, or is it because your body is still? So your body hasn't shut down. Your body hasn't.
I'm assuming rested. He doesn't feel rested at all. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I assume if you've got that kind of split personality, you think you're sleeping 23 hours a day, but you wake up absolutely fucked. It's because you've been traveling around the country, starting up Fight Club franchises, making bombs, starting Project Mayhem and all that other. But he's been a very, very busy bunny, to say the least. But yeah, like I said, like that stuff is all kind of squeezed. It's like almost like a movie's worth of information squeezed into 20 minutes. And I'm glad it is 20 minutes because I don't need another fucking hour of that. And one of the cool things about this film is it's still like 2 hours, 10 minutes long, but I think it's a pretty breezy 2 hours, 10 minutes. It sounds like you're going to disagree on this, but it feels like another director might be like, oh, especially in 2025, they would turn this into like a 2 hour, 30-minute, 2 hour, 40-minute movie with just more and more Project Mayhem and explaining that stuff away. I'm like, I don't really care. I don't think most people care. I understand why it's there. Obviously it's in the book and all that jazz, but narratively, the ending doesn't make sense unless you have that 20 minutes. I'm just glad that they kind of got through it as quickly as they did, at least.
So I agree with you to the most part. I agree with you that we don't need a lot of information around Project Mayhem. What I do need, though, is to understand how they were able to paint the smiley face on the
as a classic Rob thing.
Yeah,
yeah. No, it's a good point though. I had no idea.
Yeah, because it's on a skyscraper, so obviously you're going to tell me that they've used the window cleaner up and down bloody thing that goes outside. I would assume. But fucking hell, that's a perfect circle. And that thing's got to go up. It's got to move a little bit. It's got to go down. It's got to move. Like, how did they paint?
Is there the sequence when, like he suddenly is having that realization that he is Tyler Durden, and it's like, how much of my day have I spent being Tyler Durden? And there's one flash sequence where he's on top of a building shouting down at the guys, and it looks like they're like rappelling down. So maybe it was kind of that sequence, but suddenly you're like, this is all getting a little bit Navy SEALs. And I know they're doing some form of training, but they're still just in that little ass house.
And they're doing some form of training. The training is basically they're all just yelling at each other or digging holes in the back garden. But again, when I know he's a smart man, as you said, apparently his subconscious can make explosives out of soap. But when did he learn to create an SAS unit?
Well, if you don't sleep, it's amazing what you can achieve. Like this whole idea, I think it was like, was it Margaret Thatcher supposedly only slept 4 hours a day? And I do think, I was like, how amazing would it be if you slept for 4 hours and you woke up just bright as a daisy and you're just like, oh, you could just, start your day then. Of course, some people are like, oh my God, all the things I could achieve. I'm like, man, I'd finish Indiana Jones and the Great Circle a lot quicker if I was waking up at fucking 4 in the morning. I could just get on with my day, but hey ho. Anyway, should we move on to a favorite scene, or is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I think we're clear on my notes. I think I'm all good.
Cool. For me, I mean, there's a whole bunch of absolutely fantastic sequences, and it'd be easy to say that final shot with, the great last line of the film and the buildings going down and all that jazz. But it probably is the first fight, like when they fight each other outside the bar. So I love the bar sequence. The bar just looks like a lot of fun. And there's a lot of smoke in this film in bars because it's 1999. I'm like, oh, that looks very fun. But when they go outside, it's like, how much can you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? I just love that whole sequence. I also love the other sequence when they get the guy outside the shop. It is that whole Tyler Durden kind of like get into his mentality where he holds the gun to the guy's head and he tells him to be a veterinarian. And it's a horrible sequence in many respects, but when he explains what he's done and how awesome it'll be for that guy, it's like, oh, tomorrow will be the best day of his life. You're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. You can get on board with, his train of thought. But for me, it's the opening bar sequence and the fight outside.
So I'm going to have to pick two, right? So the first one is when Edward Norton fucks himself up.
In the office.
In the office, yeah. Because it's the way his boss looks at him. Well,
the only problem I have with that is the film was released just the next year. I always think of Me, Myself, and Irene with Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
do you mind? No, it isn't that. It's Ace Ventura, where he's like, "Do you mind? I'm kicking my ass." I don't know whether that would pop into my head. Is it? I think it is Ace Ventura. Oh, well, anyway, it doesn't matter.
But it's great because the way the boss is looking at him, like, and he gets away, and he said, "Oh, I walked away now with like 52 weeks of paychecks and stuff like that." And I think it's such a good scene because it's like, what would you do in that moment as well? If you were watching a guy fuck himself up and there's no witnesses and he's going to turn around and say it was you're going to have to go, okay, I'll give you what you want, because like you're not going to be able to turn around and go, he punched himself in the like really he punched himself in the face through himself.
It's tricky. They're having the same conversations. So it's like, could you really do that? Although rewatching it, I did get the impression that he kicked his own ass, went through all that fuss to just be able to work from home, which we all do in 2025. I was like, no, it sounds like he's still got his job. He's like, I can do this job from home. He's still got the plane tickets to go out. I'm like,
no. So basically, he's getting paid to not go there now. So he's getting paid to not tell them that their cars are death traps.
Yeah, I know, but it did sound, because he did say I could do this job from home, and he does take the equipment with him. And I was like, I think he's still going to do the job. He's not going to go to the office. No,
the job he can do from home is not tell. He's just taking that shit because he wants to take that shit. The job he's doing from home is he's not going to whistle blow, basically.
That was already like that was what I always took it as, he was just kind of bribing them. But it was just that one line where he says, I can basically do this job from home. And then he takes all of his equipment with him. And he does mention about the plane tickets as well, which obviously he needs for his job. And I was saying, like, this sounds like he's still going to be doing his job, only he's going to be working from home, which would have been a big deal back in 1999, which would have been a big deal up until 2020, of course. But I was just
didn't know it, but the Tyler Durden consciousness was in the back of his mind saying, take the plane tickets because we need to recruit more people across.
That was probably it. Yeah. That was probably it.
Yeah. But that is my actual favorite scene. But the other scene I have to mention as a favorite scene, maybe I could have mentioned it in Loves, was when the mechanic played by Holt McCallany and Bob Meatloaf, they're doing the billboard about use motor oil to fertilize your lawn. Yeah, and then as they're running away, Meatloaf does this fantastic slide off the billboard. It's so gracious for a guy that big. The way he slides off and just lands and runs away. That's
I don't think that's getting into most people's top 10 favorite scenes from Fight Club, but hey, that's what we're here for.
As a big man, dude, I appreciate the way a big man can do.
Hey, I love the grace, the surprising grace. Yeah. In terms of loves and hates, so loves for me, my three are: one, the cinematography by Jeff Cronenweth, which is fantastic, and the direction by Fincher as well, obviously. And that wonderful green tinge of the time, which isn't overdone in this film, but it's still apparent. The core cast would be my second choice. The three leads are all fantastic. And number three, how timeless it all feels. It's strange in so much that it feels both 99 and not 99, if that makes sense. And I think a big part of the fact that it feels so 99 is because I attach it so much with that year in cinema and a time and place in my life. But if you just go watch it on its own merits, like I said, other than the payphones and stuff, you're like, this film looks like it could have been shot yesterday. It's just a gorgeous looking film. There aren't too many technological giveaways which say, oh, this is definitely a film from depressingly 26 years ago, which really does make me feel slightly sick, if truth be told. But I think aesthetically, in many respects, this film is absolutely timeless. And I'm going to stick in for the ending, the song, the last line, the Pixies, absolute gold.
That is the one thing David Fincher does well, mind. I will give him that, definitely, is he makes his films timeless. You could think of, for argument's sake, like Seven. Unnamed cities be damned, but you don't know when it's set. It could be a neo-noir, it could be some sort of weird futuristic film. It's just they're timeless in that regard. It's the same with this. It's just timeless. It's in its sense of time. It doesn't feel, to me, it doesn't feel 1999. It doesn't. It just feels like a place in time.
I mean, other than the fact that, like I said, culturally, I know it's a not just a 90s film, but so specifically a 1999 film. But if it wasn't for the fact that I grew up with it and all this other nonsense, like you say, if I was watching this now and you said, what year was this released? I'd be like, I don't fucking know. But all I know is it still looks fantastic to this day.
And I do appreciate films for nameless cities. Like you don't have to make the city the part of the film. You know, sometimes the city is the sixth actor in a film or something like that. Like if you set a film in New York City, it's all about New York. If you set a film in but for this, we're just in a place that needs to burn. Basically, same with Seven or anything
a lot of the issue as well. Like, because of course, if you're like, oh, this is set in a certain city, like, well, that wouldn't make sense. You never do this. But if it's just like unnamed American Fincher city, then you can just play around with the geography. It's like the whole thing about like, you just want to get rid of mobile phones. You don't want mobile phones in movie. They just kind of, antithetical to kind of, narration to script writing and all these other things. It's just like, they're just something you have to constantly get around. Like, fuck that off. And it's the same with cities. Unless it is about the city and it is a Chicago film, a London film, a New York film, it's like, just make it a kind of nondescript, all right, it's clearly an American city, but that's fine because then he can fuck around with the geography as much as he wants. And obviously he's done things differently. Like, The Game, for instance, is very much a San Francisco film, but a lot, like you said, Seven, all that jazz. It's just like, it's just city. It's just American rain. Why is it raining all the time? Because it's David Fincher's city, so it doesn't fucking matter. But hey.
And to be fair, that's my first love, mind. Just the fact that it is just unnamed city. It could be a place in time. It's fantastic for that regard. My second one is it looks good. As you said, I mean, it's filmed great with the weird green tinges and things like that. It looks really good. And finally, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton together. I think they're great together. I think they should have done more stuff together on screen.
Just like peak, like interesting movie stars. Like they're both movie stars, but they take interesting roles. They're both character actors as well in their own rights. Fantastic in this film. Hates. I already mentioned a bunch. I just don't like the second half quite as much. When it becomes more unsubtly archaic and dystopian, it's just not as much fun, which sounds ridiculous. When it becomes more archaic and dystopian, it's not as much fun. But like I said, it loses that dark sense of humor. Number two, Norton's Yin Yang Table. There aren't many things which change this film. That yin yang table is fucking one of them. I don't know why. Whenever I see this film, even when I was younger, I just always hated that table, and it looks so out of place. He's got another one stylish flat. I was like, who thought that yin yang table would be a good idea? Maybe it's just for that one shot after the flat explodes because it's so distinct. You see it on the floor, and you're like, okay, this is clearly his place because there's that ugly ass table. Three, and this is more of a personal thing, everything feels so purposefully but unpleasantly dirty. I'm a bit of a clean freak, and everything about this film
which is ironic because a lot of this film is about soap.
Yeah, it is about soap, but everything feels so fucking grimy. And number four, knowing I could never put off the Tyler red leather jacket. It's just one of those things that I said earlier. It could have become iconic, but everybody knew they just couldn't pull it off. So it's just one of those things. But those are my hates.
I've done a bit generic for mine, if I'm honest. The first one is funny that you mentioned the yin yang table because for me, it's promising me he's looking at a porn mag when it turns out to be an IKEA magazine. When he's on the toilet and he's got it like double spread open, he's looking at this and you think, oh yeah, you're gonna see some shot of something. It's just like an IKEA table or something that he's ordering online.
I wonder if that was purposeful. Like he's almost treating it like pornography. Like he's so into it, you know. And like you said, that was some of the less subtle stuff. Some like more clumsily implemented aspects of this film is when he's having that drink at the bar with Tyler Durden, that first drink. And the scene, like I said, it's my favorite sequence. But he's like, oh, you know, I had those shirts, I had those. You know, all the mugs and stuff. Everything was nearly perfect. I was almost complete. And I was just like, it's one of the few sequences. Was like, I don't think anyone talks like that or ever did. It felt a little bit heavy-handed. So, yeah, but hey, anyway, moving on.
The other thing I wrote down, again, you mentioned the yin yang table. Exercise bike on the balcony. Like when it went through and why is your exercise bike on the balcony?
Yeah, it seems strange. Very odd. It's like, I would absolutely have that's the one benefit of having an exercise bike is the fact that it's indoors. You have to deal with the weather, especially if you're living in David Fincher's city and it's pissing down all the time.
Yeah,
put that bike inside, for heaven's sake. It's like having an exercise bike outside in Wales or fucking Seattle. It's just like, no, dude, put it in the living room.
Number two for me is pissing in the soup. Or the clam chowder or whatever it was.
It's pretty grim.
I mean, you get the scene as well.
It was obviously worse what you did in the clam chowder, but yeah, pissing in the soup still pretty bad. Jizzing in the clam chowder is even worse. But all very unpleasant.
When they're ordering food and the guy goes, "You'll have the clean meal." In that case, would I recommend not having the soup? Yes, you won't have the soup wherever it was. Like,
I think it was the clam chowder. Funny enough, but very unpleasant. Very unpleasant.
And finally, it just gets boring. It picks up, it gets boring, and it picks up again, and it just peaks and troughs of it. And I had a bunch of issues with the pacing of it and everything, so I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Alternative titles for this film? I'd be surprised if there are all that many, but I've been surprised in the past.
There's not many, but there's a couple of juicy, interesting ones. Yeah. Okay, so I've got to go down quite a bit for these because it's Fight Club pretty much everywhere. And the ones where it's not are ones where I've been called out in the past for saying the country's wrong. So,
okay.
Kazakhstan?
Yeah, nailed it.
Club of Dwarfs.
That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Out of the title. Slovenia. The Club of Bare Fists.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's better than the fucking dwarf one, but it's not great.
Taiwan Fighting Club.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And finally, like I said, there wasn't many at all. Vietnam, the Arena of Life and Death.
No. That sounds like the kind of film some critics thought this film was, but no, it's not the Arena of Life.
That sounds like the straight to DVD film I would be watching next to King of the Kickboxers and Shoot Fighter 2.
Yeah, like Kickboxer 7 and then that at the end of it. It's like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Any facts this film? All I've got is actually, I just wanted to bring up one. How many scenes do you think are in this film where Starbucks cups are involved? So there are loads of Starbucks cups, but there are, and I'm just going to tell you, there are 10 separate sequences in this film where you see Starbucks cups. Obviously very purposeful, the whole commercialization thing, blah, blah, blah. And there's even a website/blog dedicated to it. So it's just if you go to this website, it's literally just all the scenes in Fight Club and the timestamp and everything, and where you can see the Starbucks cups. So yeah, it's a thing in this film. I never really noticed it, but yeah, at least 10 sequences.
No, I didn't really. I must not have been paying that much attention. I couldn't pick out a Starbucks cup in this film.
I think that's completely reasonable. If you're not looking out for them, there are a couple which are much more prevalent, I suppose, but there are loads of sequences when they're in the background. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and you would take a lunatic to notice them. But yeah, I certainly never did.
Okay, so author Chuck Palahniuk first came up with the idea for the novel after being beaten up on a camping trip when he complained to some nearby campers about the noise of their radio. When he returned to work, he was fascinated to find that nobody would mention or acknowledge his injuries, instead saying such commonplace things as, "How was your weekend?" Palahniuk concluded that the reason people reacted this way was because if they asked him what had happened, a degree of personal interaction would be necessary, and his workmates simply didn't care enough to connect with him on a personal level. It was his fascination with this societal blocking which became the foundation for the novel.
Yeah, I can get that. Some people just don't want to, like, the whole idea that most people don't want to get into a fight. They'll do anything to like steer clear of it. And some people, if they've been into a fight, they're like, it's just going to be an awkward interaction. I don't know this person well enough, so I'm just not going to deal with it. It's like a dude who one day, I still can't believe he fucking did this, showed up to his first day in work, yeah? So it's like, you've got the job, you go on first day. This motherfucker, this is just a normal office job. He wears a poker visor, a fucking poker visor, and nobody says shit because everyone's just like, it's so weird that it's like, wait, is this like a medical thing? I was just like, no. I was like, so what was the answer in the end? We never found out. So what the fuck do you mean? Nobody ever asked him why the fuck he wore a poker visor to work on his first day. That is such a ballsy fucking move. Or he's just a goddamn lunatic. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's the same as bruises. It's just like, this is weird. But it could be something odd that I don't want to bring up, so I'm just not going to fucking mention it. So yeah, bruises are the same as poker visors in the office. Nobody wants to say shit.
At around the 38-minute mark, in the scene when Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are drunk and hitting golf balls, they really are drunk, and the golf balls are sailing directly into the side of the catering truck. Nice. Can you imagine the poor caterer? Just trying to serve their fucking meals and just getting pelted with golf balls.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a cool story though, wouldn't it? If you had like a bruise, like, and you're just like, what happened there? It's like, it comes back to the story. Would anyone even bring it up? But if they did, you'd be like, well, I got hit by a golf ball. It's like, were you playing golf? It's like, no, Brad Pitt was in the movie. It's like, that's kind of cool. It'd almost be worth taking the hit for the story, I think.
After the initial copyright warning, there is another warning on the DVD. This warning is from Tyler Durden and is only there for a second. And it says, if you're reading this, then this warning is for you. Every word you read of this useless fine print is another second off your life. Don't you have other things to do? Is your life so empty that you honestly can't think of a better way to spend these moments? Or are you so impressed with authority that you give respect and credence to all who claim it? Do you read everything you're supposed to read? Do you think everything you're supposed to think? But what you're told you should want? Get out of your apartment, meet a member of the opposite sex, stop the excessive shopping and masturbation. Quit your job, start a fight, prove you're alive, and if you don't claim your humanity, you will become a statistic. You have been warned. Tyler.
Bit heavy-handed there, Tyler, but fair enough. He's got a message, I suppose.
At around 34 minutes, when the narrator hits Tyler Durden in the ear, Edward Norton actually did hit Brad Pitt in the ear. Yeah. He was originally going to fake hit him, but before the scene, David Fincher pulled Norton aside and told him to hit him in the ear. After Norton hitting in the scene, you can see him smiling and laughing while Pitt is hurting and swearing.
Yes, but yeah, and his response obviously wasn't like scripted. Right in the fucking ear, it's like, that's awesome.
When at around the 54-minute mark, when Tyler catches the narrator listening at the door as he has sex with Marla, he is wearing a rubber glove. This was Brad Pitt's idea and caused a great deal of controversy with president of production at Fox 2000 Pictures, Laura Ziskin. She was horrified when she saw the scene and demanded that it be removed. However, at a subsequent test screening, the appearance of the glove got the biggest laugh of the whole movie, prompting Ziskin to change her mind. Why did a rubber glove upset her so much?
It's strange. I guess it kind of suggests that maybe the sex is a bit more freaky than your standard missionary. But considering how much they lean into the noises, like you're really, really screaming, it's just like I don't think it's that odd to see a rubber duck. I mean, fuck, there's a scene with a dildo afterwards. It is odd that would upset her so much. Maybe she had a run with a rubber glove herself. Who knows? Who knows?
Oh, mate, there was something else that she wasn't a fan of. So at around the 52-minute mark, just 2 minutes before the rubber glove, the original pillow talk scene had Marla saying, "I want to have your abortion." When this was objected by Laura Ziskin, David Fincher said he would change it on the proviso that the new line couldn't be cut. Ziskin agreed, and Fincher wrote the replacement line, "I haven't been fucked like that since grade school."
Which is a great line. Yeah, not quite as bad as the first. The first one is pretty gruff. That is a rough line.
Well, to be fair, so when Ziskin saw the new line, she was even more outraged and asked for the original line to be put back. But as per their deal, Fincher refused.
That's fair play. You've got to stick to your guns with these things. Got to stick to the guns.
During the shooting of the film, Helena Bonham Carter insisted that her makeup artist apply all of her makeup with her left hand because Bonham Carter felt that Marla was not a person who would be particularly skilled at or concerned with correctly applying makeup.
She is perhaps the most 90s thing in this film. Her whole look is very 1999 in a way that others aren't.
Brad Pitt wasn't overly interested in making the film until David Fincher arrived on his doorstep during the making of Meet Joe Black, insisting that they go for a beer. It was over that beer that Fincher pitched Fight Club and Pitt agreed to read the screenplay.
Well, maybe he was like, halfway through Meet Joe Black, he was like, he suddenly realized what kind of film he was in. It's like, I've really got to do something different.
It was when Fincher turned around and said, "You don't have to speak Jamaican. You don't have to be all
right." Oh my God, that Jamaican sequence.
You do not have to be Irie.
Honestly. You're Irie. I was like, wowzers, man. That was a big swing. And for it not to be like any sense, like there's no knowingness to that sequence. It's just like, no, we're just going to go for this and do it like completely straight faced. It's a shocker in a pretty shitty film, if truth be told.
To ensure that Bob's breasts and love handles hung correctly, his fat suit was filled with birdseed so that it would spill over his pants and give the impression of sagging flesh. Altogether, the suit plus the seed weighed over 100 pounds. Poor Meatloaf, fucking hell.
Poor Meatloaf. What other films? He was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, wasn't he?
I mean,
that's the other one I remember him.
Fucking loads. Like the one
But it was always quite knowing, wasn't it? It was usually playing up on his persona. I can't remember many films where Meatloaf was just playing a fucking dude,
So, randomly, right, I know this. He was the bus driver in Spice World.
Yeah, that's playing. Yeah.
He was the lizard, was it, in 51st State with Robert Carlyle and Samuel L. Jackson?
That's the one where Robert Carlyle's totally carrying around with like a Liverpool shirt under like a long black coat the whole film. Yeah. I always just remember that look is just not really working.
He was the weird creature hijacker guy and yes, this is a deep cut, Black Dog with Patrick Swayze, where Patrick Swayze played a trucker and he was being hunted by Meatloaf's character. Oh, mate, he's been in loads. He was in he was a copper in a weird sci-fi film called Wishcraft, where it was like a monkey paw situation. Where, yeah, where somebody wishes on something, and and he was the inspector, and I think he had his head taken off with a bowling ball, if I remember rightly.
Well, he's been in a lot, maybe not a lot of great movies. Maybe that's the reason this stands out.
114 acting credits.
Jesus Christ! Right, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But in fairness, when you name those films, I'm just like, no, it's fine that I don't know any of these. That's absolutely fine.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of these acting credits would probably be because of his music videos, which can be classed as fucking cinematic.
I mean, they really went for it, didn't they, back in the day, of course.
No, there's loads, mate, but I'm going to end them there because we'll just be here forever. Yeah.
So Hunt to the Future is where we ask the question, remake, sequel, Let It Die, Leave Well Alone. I mean, this is so high on the Leave Well Alone list. I already mentioned that, earlier. I have no idea what a 2025 version of Fight Club looks like, but I do not want to see it at all. So yes, completely leave this movie alone. This is like right at the very top of leave this the fuck alone.
Yeah, leave it be. As much as there was things I had issues with in this film, you don't need to remake this, and it does need to be there in the ether, as it were. So this film does need to exist. So just leave it alone. Just let it be Fight Club.
Imagine watching like the millennial or the Gen Z version of this film. God, it just the thought of it literally makes my.
You couldn't anyway, because as soon as you saw fucking him kicking the shit out of himself, it'd be on social media. Nobody would go up and talk to him. They would just all be filming it.
Beyond the whole cultural thing, then there's the technology thing. Forget about it. It's not happening. Make a change. So this, if you could only make one change to make this a better movie, unsurprisingly, it's the second, not the whole second half, because it is like really what I'm talking about is like a 30-minute period of this film. But the whole Project Mayhem lacks the subtlety, wit, and dark humor of the first half, and all becomes inherently quite silly. I'm not sure if it's self-aware, like we already mentioned, the whole like Invasion of the Body Snatchers style, everyone's nodding at him like the whole world is in on this fight club. I can't tell at that point if it's in on the joke or not, but for me it just doesn't work, that whole part of the film. Again, I appreciate why it's there and how it needs to be there, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's easily the weakest part of the movie for me.
I kind of agree. So it wasn't so much the Project Mayhem thing. For me, the making a change would be to tone it down a little bit, to bring it back to the origins of the Fight Club. Just more within the Fight Club. It doesn't need to be all of a sudden this Fight Club's all over the world. We started it. We started this. We, like you said, we don't need to branch out or anything. Just bring it back to the original Fight Club and do a story within that. So I think you just need to tone it down, take less away of we're gonna like change the world and blow up these buildings and shit. But unfortunately, you do then miss the pixies, as you said, and that great ending scene.
Yeah, the payoff is it's kind of like my issue, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I always defend the fridge sequence in what's it called? The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull,
yeah. Because I think the payoff at the end is unbelievable. With Indy's silhouette and the mushroom cloud and stuff like that. And I know everyone doesn't agree. And this is slightly different because the build-up obviously is 30 minutes longer and is inherently silly as the fridge sequence from. Although the more I watch that sequence, I think it's brilliant. But that's besides the point. The payoff is amazing, and to end on such a high note, if that makes sense. Kind of almost makes me forget that I wasn't such a big fan of the previous 30 minutes, but it's still an issue. Best and worst of IMDb. I bet
video games first.
But... Oh, video games. Oh, sorry. There isn't an ill-advised PS2 and Xbox original Xbox game created by Vivendi Studios, but like some of the reviews, it totally misses the point and makes it an actual fighting game. This film isn't actually about fighting. As bizarre as that sounds, excuse me, I know it's called Fight Club, I know there's fighting in it, but this film isn't actually about fighting. And the fact that they managed to make a video game about the movie where it is just fighting completely misses the point. And unsurprisingly, I don't think there should be a video game. If there was, it would have to be like a narrative and dialogue based one rather than actual fighting. But it's one of those, the last thing I want to see in this world is a fucking Fight Club video game.
Sleeping Dogs, to be fair, where you've got the missions to run around the city and do these things to bring the destruction down. It's more, if you're going to make it a video game, you'd make it the Project Mayhem style of the video game.
Yeah,
where you've got to run around and do it. But if we were going to have a video game of Fight Club, that's the way it's going to be.
But that's the thing. Yeah, if you're going to do something, that's a perfectly reasonable option. But I just don't think a Fight Club video game would work in any form, to be honest. But for lack of a better answer, I will go with yours. And I think we keep going back to that because we both just really like Sleeping Dogs, to be honest.
Yeah.
Best and worst of IMDb. So this is where we pick out one 1-star and one 10-star review. I assume there's going to be like 600 reviews for this film. A lot more.
Well, you were kind of right. So he said 600, 4,660 reviews. This is
love this
so film. Far since we've been doing this section. This is the most reviews
by a long way.
Had. Yeah,
by a long way.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that there's a lot more 10 stars than there are 1 stars. Put it that way. I'm going to say there's 1,200 10-star reviews. I know that's high.
No, higher, dude. So basically, at 4,660 reviews in total. Nearly half, 2,306 10-star.
I mean, people love this film. People adore this film.
So, 10-star review written on the 3rd of October, 2019. How this is not everyone's favorite movie is beside me. I first saw Fight Club when I was 8 years old. I didn't understand any of it, but I liked the fighting and the editing. I saw it again when I was 13 and just started seeing movies for what they were, a language through which the filmmakers interpret their own views on the world. I understood more of it, especially being part of the middle children of history generation. After that, I saw it at least once per year, and every single time I realized something new or different about it and the world itself. I grew with this movie, both intellectually and spiritually. Still, it took me another 12 years to understand this movie, that this movie is the textbook for Jungian psychology, besides already being the single greatest social critique of the consumer era. It's ridiculously smart, deep, beautiful, and cool. I've watched basically every movie out there, and nothing comes even close to the degree to the
that's a
degree
bold claim
of greatness of Fight Club. I guarantee you, Mr. Johnny Silverhand 13047, you've not seen every movie out there. There's no way a guy who was writing this has seen, again, King of the Kickboxers, Shoot Fighter 2, Bloodsport 4. Like, I'm sorry.
There's just no way. There's no way. There's no way.
That's it. So he says, even close to the degree of greatness of Fight Club. So yeah, he doesn't hold up for him. This film holds up. No film holds a candle to this, basically. So,
well, I don't think that's true. I think this is a fantastic film. I don't think I suspect on like a lot of like greatest movies of all times lists, like this film is going to show up pretty high on a lot of lists. I wouldn't have it quite up there, but it is very good. But yeah. But this guy's seen like every movie, so what the fuck do I know? You know, he's clearly he's clearly better educated than I. And he wants to. Well, there's bound to be a few. I'm going to say 209 one-star reviews.
You're getting quite good at this. You're getting close. 161.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, so you're doing all right. Yeah, as we get on, you're getting better at guessing how many. So
I shit the bed with the first one when I said 600. It was 4,000. But I think I was just going based off the other films we've done. They've all been in the kind of hundreds. Like this is the first one in the thousands, let alone 4,600.
So 1-star review. Like I said, this was written on 24th of September 2013. Title: Twilight for Males.
Oh, somebody's missed the point. Yeah.
So it starts off. So it flirts a bit with the ideals of anti-conformism and anti-corporate. A bit hypocritical considering a corporate made this movie, but let's pretend otherwise. And then offers as a solution a gang of people meeting up to beat each other. Like to hell with the system, and we'll make a super gang of fighters and take over. And then what? I see people rebelling, but without any goal or project beside rebelling. We are tired of this system. We make gangs and beat up corporates. I won't even go into the plot flaws of the protagonist, etc., because that would be too easy. A movie for losers with a lot of passive aggressiveness inside and no solution for it. They just want to rebel. A movie for people who will go all F the system and then buy the iPhone 17 on first day, just to complain the following day about their low-paying job. A movie for those typical guys who talk crap about capitalism, but if you try to offer them a different system, they'll dirty their pants and start sucking their fingers, calling mum, to save them from the terrorist. A movie for those who are all rebellious and when stopped by police will go all, good afternoon, agent, and shit their pants. Like, I don't know, I can't take a guy serious who keeps saying, well, what was it he said? Corporate.
This is one of those reviews.
Yeah, that you beat up corporates. What the fuck is a corporate?
Yeah.
Is he trying to say corporation?
This is one of those reviews where it's a review about Fight Club, but it's not really about Fight Club, if you know what I mean. It's about his views on the world.
His views, but he's trying to prove how smart he is by basically just sounding like a...
It's one of those reviews that's not really about the movie. It's more about him and his views on the world. So, yes. Let's be honest, a 1-star review for this film is more than a little extreme, to say the least, because there are certainly things to hang your hat on. But it did have that impact on some people because, they thought about it as being like, glorifying violence or having this kind of really anarchistic, is that the word?
I'll go with that.
Well, just that emphasis on anarchy, which I think is one of the points he's actually missed there. It's like, what's their plans beyond kind of bringing these things down? It's like, well, they're not. And it's not kind of laid out in the same way that, say, the Joker does in The Dark Knight. This whole idea, I'm just going to burn all this money. It's like, introduce a bit of anarchy. But that's ostensibly what Tyler Durden is. He is an agent of anarchy in many respects. So does he have a plan beyond fucking shit up and just starting it from scratch? No, not really, but I also think that's kind of the point. So a bit extreme there with his 1-star review. As for our own ratings and recommendations, which are obviously going to be quite different as we found out discussing this film, for me, it is a 5, despite its faults, and as a recommendation, yes. Easy, yes, because it still holds up. It's still a fantastic film. It's utterly 99 and totally timeless at the same time. It still looks great. It still works, even though it's fundamentally about the failure of Gen X and the existential crisis of young adults without real-world fears at the turn of the millennium. Is that still prevalent today? No, but you can understand it. Even if you don't want to watch it on that level, it still works. It's still a great-looking movie. It's still wonderfully acted. So yes, it's a 5 with the caveat that it still has its problems, but I think the highs are so high that it still works as a 5-star film. And still, like, consider it's 26 years old. This film hasn't aged today. It's wonderful.
It's a 3-star film, but it is a recommend, like, because it does look good. Mm-hmm. You can kind of forgive the parts that fall down for the parts that build it back up, but I can't give it anything more than a 3. But I would recommend it. I would recommend people watch this film.
Yeah, and if anything, it's just one of those films. If you manage to not watch Fight Club, but by now, it just feels like one of those films you should watch and have your own opinion on. Because not everybody loves it, but if it's a film that clicks with you, you probably will fall in love with it. And I don't think there's any like we mentioned so many times on this podcast. There are films which we loved growing up, and we want to recommend it, but there's like a barrier, whether it be aesthetic, tonally, whatever. Where you're just like, oh, if you're watching this now in 2024, 2025 for the first time, you might really struggle with this element of the film. I don't think there's any problem there. I know I mentioned the whole Gen X thing. It's about a certain time and place. But I think anyone with fucking 2 brain cells to rub together could figure that out pretty quickly. So yeah. I really don't think there's any barrier to entry with this film. It still looks fantastic. It's wonderfully acted. All these things, and as we mentioned so many times, it is aesthetically and tonally, structurally timeless. So yeah, a 5 and a recommend from me. So yeah, that's been 1999's Fight Club. Next week it's my choice, and spoiler alert. We've already made the decision on this one. So basically, because we've already got episode 200 planned out, we've got like a few lined up for 201, 202 onwards. We're like, Rob basically really wanted to cover Cuffs, and it's on Amazon Prime at the moment, and I couldn't break his little heart. He so wants to do Cuffs, and we didn't want to have to wait.
Hero.
And not just that, but we want other people. If you're watching, you're listening to the podcast, we want you to have the opportunity to watch the film. And it is brilliant that Cuffs is on Amazon Prime at the moment. I know not everyone has Amazon Prime, but a lot of people do, and it just means it's so much easier to go back and watch the film. So now seems a perfect time as any to go to give it a bash, so to speak. And it's a film that literally the only thing I remember about it, beyond the fact that Christian Slater's in it and he was really cool in 1992, is that I remember thinking, this is cool. I like Christian Slater. That is it. That is all I remember. I'm like, I remember quite enjoying it, and Christian Slater was cool in it. I can't remember a single thing else about it. So it's almost going to be like watching it. It's like Gleam in the Cube, where for some reason that movie was burned into my fucking memory. Cuffs, I just remember liking it. Don't remember anything else. I literally couldn't even give you a vague synopsis of this film. I just remember the poster with him with the glasses and the gun. Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't know what happens in this film. I can't even remember who the female lead is. Oh, wait, no, I do. It's Milla Jovovich, isn't it?
It's Milla Jovovich. 2 things, right? I'm so excited to watch this film. Yes, you are my hero. Because as soon as I found her on Amazon Prime, I couldn't wait. Even to the point where
he was so quiet about it. He didn't even demand it. He was just like, oh, well, it's your choice next week. And, but Cuffs is on. And I don't know. I was like, yeah, it's okay. Well, we can do it next week. It's fine, dude. It's fine.
It was to the point where I was going to go, maybe we kibosh Fight Club to watch Cuffs. Like,
or maybe we just kibosh episode 200. We do it as Cuffs instead of Robot Jocks. It'd be ridiculous.
The other thing.
Imagine that. All that build up to Robot Jocks. And like episode 199, we just fucking blow the way. Now we're just going to do Cuffs instead. Fuck it.
I'll give you a heads up because I've known this for ages. I've always watched because I've watched this. I haven't watched it for ages, obviously, because it hasn't been over in the UK. But I have watched it quite a lot as a kid. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a heads up. Milla Jovovich was 15 during pre-production, was 16 during the film. When you watch that, just keep that in mind.
Okay,
she was 16.
I will very much keep that in mind. I think
16.
The thing is, if I remember this film fondly, there's always that. Well, at the time when I watched it, I was like 10 years old, so it's fine. But if I don't really remember it and I'm watching it, it's probably best to have that warning just in case. Because I assume she's not playing 15, 16 then.
No. She's playing like a university student or a college student or anything. But
she is officially jail-based, as it were. Yep. You have to be careful. Well, that is, well, thanks for the heads up. And obviously to anyone, listening to this and going into watching potentially Cuffs next week, you doing anything.
And just another heads up, Christian Slater, 22.
Okay, so yeah, this isn't making sense because I really still can't remember anything in this film, but I assume that maybe something happens and it's going to be quite uncomfortable with that additional knowledge. But I'm still looking forward to Cuffs. And as we said, it is on Amazon Prime if you want to give it a go, whether it be for the first time or go back to it, whatever. I mean, as I said, for me, I might as well be watching it for the first time because I don't remember shit.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to watch it. I really can't. I'm really looking forward to it again.
I think it'll be a good one. Do you have any other business before we wrap this up?
No, mate, considering that I'm going to go a bit into housekeeping here, considering it's nearly midnight.
We never record. We always record like first thing in the morning. We occasionally do an afternoon. This is both well past our bedtimes. I mean, what time do you usually go to bed? I mean, even on the weekend, I'm like, by the time it gets to like 10 p.m., I'm pretty much ready for bed. I mean, 9 p.m. sometimes in the week. So yeah, the fact that it's like nearly midnight, I'm absolutely fucking hanging out of my ass. So
I got a 6 a.m. wake up call as well, so it's going to be fun.
I've just been talking bullshit, which is very likely because I do it quite often. At least on this occasion, I have an excuse, in so much that I'm just kind of completely sleep deprived. But anyway,
I got a 6 a.m. wake up call tomorrow, so this is going to be fun.
What's that for?
Oh, my own fucking thing. I'm going swimming tonight, so.
Oh, yeah. Of course, Rob. That's your fault. But in fairness, I told my wife we go out running tomorrow, so I'm going to be up at like shit. I'm going to be up before 7 as well. This is a terrible idea. Terrible idea. Anyway, I've been Liam. He's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. See you next week for Cuffs.
Cheers, guys. Bye now. I can't wait for Cuffs.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Hey, you guys!